Civilians with their families trying to escape into Russian-controlled territory, deeper into Russian-controlled territory, into Russia itself, to escape perhaps reprisals from Ukrainian troops, from Ukrainian nationalists for working with and for not resisting Russian troops, Russian forces. Nevertheless, the situation is still unfolding. The Russian High Command is confident this attempt in Kharkiv region to retake villages liberated, retaken by Russia, will be neutered, as was the attempt in Kherson.
The head of the Kharkiv region's military administration says Ukraine's proclaimed offensive on Russian-controlled areas in the province is aimed at drumming up support among Kiev's Western backers and show its use of their weaponry.
I think the Ukrainian authorities have found it necessary to report about their use of Western weaponry. That's in order to show that their forces are combat-ready and prepared to act decisively. This is exemplified by the fact that instead of immediately taking up positions when they enter populated areas, they first take photos of themselves in front of buildings and landmark road signs that they've painted blue. They do that to show they've entered the area and it's under Ukraine's control. But in fact, the reality of the situation is much different. Those soldiers are primarily in small sabotage and reconnaissance groups. They enter those settlements, make their reports, and then they leave.
Amid mounting fears of a famine in some African countries, Vladimir Putin is calling for more Ukrainian grain shipments to go to the nations that need it the most, instead of the more wealthy and prosperous European states.
We consider it just to increase grain supplies to the world's poorest countries. Russia has delivered 6.6 million tons of grain to the global market in May through August. European partners talk about a need to ensure grain supplies from Ukraine, primarily in the interests of poorer countries. But out of 87 ships that left Ukrainian ports with grain, only 2 were sent to impoverished nations under the UN Food Program.
According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, for the season of 2022-23, Russia is estimated to be world's largest wheat producer. And early on Friday, Russia's President Vladimir Putin basically confirmed it, saying that this year alone, Russia has already delivered 30 million tons of grain abroad and is ready to increase it to 50 million tons and more, as the harvest here in Russia is very good. Russia's President Vladimir Putin also reminded that only 3% of the grain that so far left the unblocked Ukrainian ports was going to the poorest countries, while most of it was sent to the EU, which is unfair, Vladimir Putin believes, as the whole idea behind the UN and Turkey brokered deal was to help starving Africa. So he concluded that this volume should be actually increased. Putin also mentioned that in the 4 months of this year alone, Russia has supplied 7 million tons of fertilizers to other countries. This is another hot topic, as this is what the harvest in other countries strongly depends on. And he also mentioned that its supply through the European ports is still prohibited, adding that this discrimination is simply unacceptable. And at the end, Vladimir Putin said that the producers of potash fertilizers are ready to transfer hundreds of thousands of tons of their products currently accumulated in the European ports to transfer to developing countries free of charge.
Queen Elizabeth's eldest son is to be officially proclaimed King Charles III on Saturday. Currently 73 years old, Charles will be the oldest royal to be declared king in British history. Britain has begun a 10-day mourning period to mark the passing of Queen Elizabeth, who died on Thursday at the age of 96 at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. She was the nation's longest-serving monarch, with her reign having spanned 7 decades. Supporters have been gathering outside London's Buckingham Palace, and others have been laying flowers at British embassies worldwide. Moscow and Paris have also hosted ceremonies in her honour, and Vladimir Putin has expressed his condolences. Well, right after the Queen's death, the BBC presented a video showing the history of her relations with Africa, claiming it was overall positive and long-standing. But many Africans expressed a much different view before the outlet blocked comments on the post.
We take a look back at Queen Elizabeth II's long-standing relationship with Africa.
Repeat after me. We take a look at Queen Elizabeth II's brutal colonization and subsequent destruction of African countries.
Please do not insult us. It's called colonialism. What is a long-standing relationship, one that is abusive, because England abused Africa big time, and it's time for United Kingdom to pay reparations.
We never had a relationship with Elizabeth. It was imperialism and colonialism, meaning it was forced into us. Colonial relationship.
The relationship between Britain and Africa is sketchy at best and really questionable at its worst. As much as during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, more and more African states got independence from their colonial master, it is largely seen as symbolic and not really qualitatively changing anything on the ground. As much as freedom was attained by these African countries, Britain kept a stranglehold over the economic industries, particularly the extractive industries. It really retained control over gold mining, platinum mining, as well as diamonds, something that clearly shows the influence that Britain has, and it remains a scorn on many Africans' faces. It's the Cullinan diamond, which was given to the Queen as a gift back in 1910. People here on the ground say they want that diamond back. It's estimated to be $400 million, and people here are saying that can be better placed to be used to answer social ills from South Africa. Now, the opposition parties here did not hold back with regards to how they felt about the legacy of Queen Elizabeth, that she failed in her quest to qualitatively acknowledge the atrocities that happened under her reign.
During her 70-year reign as queen, she never once acknowledged the atrocities that her family inflicted on native people that Britain invaded across the world. The British royal family stands on the shoulders of millions of slaves who were shipped away from the continent to serve the interests of racist white capital accumulation, at the center of which lies the British royal family.
Queen Elizabeth II leaves a very, very dodgy legacy here on the continent. There's as much people who feel for her passing than there is who are detractors. People feel that she missed an opportunity, that she could have mentioned the atrocities that happened under her reign, and she could have qualitatively done something to change the outcomes for many African people.
Belgium will not agree to a price cap on Russian gas. That's according to the country's energy minister, who says that the EU proposals are purely political. RT contributor Rachel Marsden has the story.
Our intent, which should blow up in the EU's face about as well as its other virtue signaling and manipulation attempts have if it ever decides to implement that price cap. Von der Leyen also said that a price cap on all imported gas from Russia, including non-pipeline liquefied natural gas, is currently being studied but not on the table. Belgium is one of at least 10 EU countries that wants to take that idea even further, with a price cap on LNG imported from all suppliers and not just singling out Russia politically, as you mentioned in that initial clip. So basically, now that the EU has made a total mess of its energy market, some bloc officials believe that they should be demanding discounts. It's a bit like walking into a store and demanding to get things for a lower price than everyone else who comes into the store just because you mismanaged your own finances. It's hard to imagine the US, a major supplier of LNG, agreeing to provide it to the EU at whatever price the EU chooses. What happened to this whole price cap idea being about denying Putin revenues? Now these politicians are basically admitting that it's just about saving themselves from the mess that they've made of their formerly free market by considering it for all countries now. The EU sanctions policy has been a bit like when you try to cut your own hair. You know, you give it a first shot, it comes out a little bit crooked, you realize you messed up, so you cut it the other way, it's still crooked, it's even worse, it's getting shorter and shorter, you cut more and more. Some point, maybe you realize that what you really should have done is just stop and think before doing any more damage. Let's just say that von der Leyen seems to be finding it hard to put down those scissors.
Some Germans aren't happy about the proposed EU price cap either. I discussed the controversy with German opposition politician Ralph Nehammer, who says the US is trying to use Berlin against its own European allies.
Well, I think Germany is not sovereign enough to stand up against the Americans who dictate us, first of all, not to open Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which Mr. Miller just confirmed to me is ready, and he just needed to press a button, so we would have.